So today we're going to be looking at how to edit the photos we have for the Strips project. So the end goal is to have some photos that, when edited, look something like this. So the different strips can go horizontally, diagonally, or vertically. A lot of these examples have it vertically, but you can do it other directions if you want. But you should have lots of photos to choose from to edit together for these. You want to have your photos taken with a camera, either on a tripod or on a flat surface, so that the background is staying the same and the position of the background is the same. Nothing's changing about the background at all. And the position of the camera is the same. It's just that your subject is moving slightly in the different photos. So we're going to be editing together at least 2 of these different photos, but you want to have lots to choose from. So you want to have your camera set up on either a tripod, a flat surface, a table, stack of books, anything like that works. Have your subject stand in one place. This subject could be you, and you can use a self-timer on your camera, or it could be someone else. You could use a pet if they're cooperating enough to sit still enough for this. But you want to have your subject stand in one place and move their head, upper body, anything that's in the photo around at different positions while the camera is staying the same and the background is staying the same. So you want lots of shots of this so that we have lots to choose from when we're editing them together. You can repeat this whole process with multiple different backgrounds, potentially different subjects, so you have different options as far as what photos you're editing. So once you have these photos, we want to start editing them together. So I have Photoshop open here, and I have my photos that I'm going to edit. I have lots to choose from here, but I've put those in an outtakes folder because I've narrowed them down to these photos here. These are the ones I like the best, so I'm going to open these in Photoshop and see which ones work best together. So I'm going to drag those into Photoshop. Remember, you can always go up to File and open photos that way. Or if Bridge is something that you use and you've used before, you can open things through Bridge as well, but I'm just dragging them in from Finder. You can do the same thing with the File Explorer on Windows computers. So now I have all my photos opened. They all have these tabs here, so I'm just going to look through and see which ones work best together. So it looks like the background's moving a little bit in these. I might have bumped my camera a little bit on the tripod when I was taking these photos, so I might need to adjust them just a little bit. These two look like they're pretty lined up. I could use those two together. But I kind of like these two. Even though they're a little off as far as the background, I'm liking these two. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to one of these photos and I'm going to select the whole thing and copy it and paste it over the top of this photo here. The lighting is looking pretty consistent in these. There's a little bit of shadow happening here. I could go in and lighten that with the dodge tool to lighten that up before I copy it over. Since I'm turned away from the light, it's making it a little bit darker here. But that's looking pretty good. If your overall image, if one's way brighter or darker than the other, you might want to do an adjustment layer to make it so that the brightness of each of the photos are pretty much the same. This is looking pretty good now. So I'm going to go ahead and select this whole photo here. So I'm going to do Command A or Control A if you're on a Windows computer. You can always go up to Select and All as well. And then I'm going to copy this whole thing, so Command C or Control C on Windows, or Edit, Copy. And then I'm going to go over to this other photo here that I'm going to use, and I'm just going to paste that image right on top. So Command or Control V or Edit, Paste. And now I have two layers here. I have my background layer, which is the original image that was here, and then the one I have pasted over the top. And so since they're a little off, I'm going to have to adjust this top layer so that everything in the background and the whole environment around me in the photo matches the other one. So in order to do that, I'm going to go over to my opacity while I have this top layer selected. I'm going to click the opacity and I'm going to slide it down until I can see some of the photo underneath, but I can still see that top layer as well. And so that's going to show me where the edges of things like this lamp are, and then I can line things up a little better. So using the Move tool here, I can click this top layer and slide it around so that things line up a little better. So I'm going to put it about there. To kind of fine-tune exactly where it is, I can use the arrow buttons on the keyboard. It looks like it's pretty good vertically up and down. I'm just going to slide it over a little bit with the side arrows. That's looking pretty good. I'm also looking at the edge of the chair here to line that up. And it looks like it's not only just shifted to the side, it's a little crooked. So what I can do is I can transform this image so I can rotate it a little bit. So you can go up to Edit and Free Transform. The shortcut for that is Command or Control T. So I can just go Command T, and it gives me the option to resize this. So the arrows that are on the corners lets you resize it. We don't need to resize it in this case. We're just going to scooch a little bit beyond that corner until it's that curved arrow. And that curved arrow, if you click and drag that, you can rotate the image. So if your photo is a little crooked, you can fix it with that. I think I need it right about there. About like that. Maybe inch it over just a little bit. There, that's looking a little bit better. All right, things are starting to line up. The crease in the wall there is a little off. There we go, and then just bump it over. Maybe it needs to go up a little bit. Oops, not that much. And you just want to keep adjusting it until it's lined up. So maybe not so much of a tilt there. More like that. And not quite so much. This is why it's really important to have your camera really stable on either a tripod or any other kind of table or surface that you're using. That's looking a little bit better there. So now I can click this little checkbox here or push enter on the keyboard, and that will take away those arrows to adjust it. So now things are looking pretty lined up. The chair's looking about the same, the lamp's looking the same, the wall's looking pretty much the same. So now I can go up to the opacity again and slide that all the way back up to 100%. So I'm seeing the image on the very top. Since I inched over my photo a little bit, it's cut off on one side. If everything's the same, it won't be that noticeable here. But it does look like when I took this photo, my cat was actually jumping off of the table here on the top image. So when I'm done with all this, I'm just going to crop that out. But as far as the brightness and the alignment of everything, it's looking pretty good. So now what I can do is I can go ahead and start creating strips. So what I need to do that is we're going to need the rulers. So I have them open here, but how you get to the rulers is you go up to View and you select Rulers. So it might look just plain like that. You want to go up to View and Rulers. And I found that frequently Photoshop likes to default the increments on the ruler to pixels. And so for this project, it doesn't really matter what the increments are, but when it defaults to pixels, it puts it in increments of 500, and it's kind of hard to get precise with that. So if that's the case and it's showing increments of 500 and it's showing it in pixels, you can go up to Photoshop, this little tab right here, go to Preferences, and Units and Rulers. So if I select that, it pops up with this window here, and if this top section that says Units, Rulers, if that is set to pixels, and your rulers are looking something like this, then you want to just select the Rulers section here and change that to inches. And then click OK. And that will give us some smaller increments that are a little easier to work with. So I'm going to put my photo at kind of full screen within Photoshop here, so Command or Control 0 to make sure it's nice and big. And now I can start creating guides now that I have rulers here. So I'm going to put in guides to kind of plan out how I'm going to create these strips. So my photo is pretty zoomed out. The examples we looked at were a lot closer to the subject, so I'm going to create some smaller strips so that I can get the detail out of this. I could also potentially crop down both images so that it's more of a zoomed in kind of photo, more on the subject, but I'm just going to use this like this for now. So I'm going to create increments of, let's start out with about 1/2 inch. So every 1/2 inch I'm going to click over on the rulers here, hold, drag out, and drop a guide. And I want to make sure they're right on the right section here. There we go. I'm going to try them on a 1/2 inch. I might need to go smaller. If your photo is really zoomed in, you might want to do an inch, 1/2 inch, maybe even a 1/4 inch. It just depends on the photo you have, how zoomed in it is, how large your subject is in relation to the rest of the frame of the photo. But this is pretty zoomed out, so I'm going to start with 1/2 inch, maybe go down to a 1/4 inch. So I'm going to go ahead and put in these guides. So now I have all my guides in place at every 1/2 inch. It looks like these are fairly large, so if I want it more precise, I could go in and add them at every 1/4 inch, so in between all of these to create them about half the size that it currently is. So now I have all my guides in place at 1/4 inch each. So you can get a lot more precise with the placement of your rulers if you zoom in. So I'm going to Command or Control plus, and using the space bar, holding that down, I can move it upward, and I can look at the edge of my photo and the increments for the rulers. So then I can just look through and make sure everything's pretty even. This one looks like it needs to move over a little bit to be on that 1/4 inch there. So it's always a good idea to zoom in close, look at your rulers, see if anything needs to move at all. You're looking pretty good. Because this project will look even better when the increments are really precise. There we go, and now they're looking a little more spot on. So now I have all my increments, and now I can start making selections to take out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over to the rectangular marquee tool. If it has any of these other marquee tools selected, make sure to hold it down and select the rectangular one. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start at the very beginning here. I'm going to click and hold and drag within that first section. And once I have that selected, top to bottom, I'm going to go ahead and push delete on the keyboard. And then I'm going to skip one, go to the next one, delete that, skip one, go to the next one, select that, delete, and this is where you're going to see really well if you've lined up your photos. So the lamp's looking a little off, so I might not have it quite lined up properly, but it's looking pretty close. So I'm just going to keep going, skip one, go to the next one, select that top to bottom, push delete. I think it's going to actually look pretty good with the kind of wavy edge there. And I want to make sure I just have the one section selected. You can also, when you hover over this section, you can always click and drag it, skip one, go to the next, delete, and do it that way. And you want to do that all the way across your image. Always skipping one, deleting the next one, and alternating all the way across the image. So now that I'm starting to be over my subject, I can start to see some differences. Over here, not so much since that's just the background. Let's see, that's the one I need to delete. Skip one, go to the next one, delete. And you want to do that all the way across the whole photo. So now I've gone through the whole photo and deleted every other section. So now I can get rid of all these guides so I can see what this actually looks like. I can also deselect my selection here by doing Command or Control D to deselect. You can always go up to Select and deselect as well. And to get rid of my guides here, I'm going to go back to View, and down past the ruler section is the section on guides, and I'm just going to clear guides. So now I can see this alternated sections that I have here. It's looking pretty striped and warped the way I want. Looks like I may have missed a section right down here. So I'm going to go in, zoom in, scroll down, and it looks like there's a section missing, or it might be where I adjusted the photo when I was rotating it. So let's see if I can select this area here and push delete. Oops, it's not quite selected even here. So let me get real precise. There we go. I'm going to push delete and then Command D to deselect. It's looking a little bit better. If you're missing any sections down here or on one side or the other, make sure to go in and adjust that. Delete any little section that you need to. I'm going to crop my photo anyway, so the edges won't matter quite as much. So that's looking pretty good. And you can make sure you have every other section selected by turning off the background layer, kind of seeing how things are looking. All right, so now that I've adjusted all that, I can go ahead and save it. I'm going to save it first and then crop it so that the cropped version is a copy. And so since I have multiple layers, when I go up to File and Save As, it's going to automatically save it as a Photoshop document. I'm going to say Save on my computer, and it's going to automatically want to make it a PSD or a Photoshop document since it has multiple layers. I want to preserve both those layers in case I need to go in and change anything later. So I'm going to first save it as a Photoshop document. I'm going to take out this title here and call it Strips or Strips Project. I've already created a couple, so I'm going to say this one's Strip Project number 3. So you can always edit more of these. If you don't like the way it turned out, you can always try different photos that you have. And so you can always name them with different numbers. So I have strips project number 3.psd. Remember, anything that you are putting into the file name, you want to have that before the dot so that it doesn't mess with the file type. It's going to go back into the strips folder where I got it from, and I'm going to go ahead and click save and OK. And so now I have that Photoshop document saved, but to turn it into Schoology, it's best to turn in JPEG since they're smaller files. So I'm going to go up to File, Save As, save on my computer again, and I'm going to call it the same thing. I'm just going to go to the format and I'm going to change that to JPEG. It's still going into that same folder, and I'm going to click Save. And OK. So now if I go and look in Finder or File Explorer if you're on a Windows computer, now I have my original photos here, I have my edited ones, so I just created strips project number 3, so I have my JPEG and I have my Photoshop document. So if I go ahead and open the JPEG, since it's the Photoshop document that's open here, if I click and drag that, put it into the tabs here, since it's a JPEG, it's flattened my layers. I don't have any layers on here. So I can't really change anything about it as far as the different strips and the different layers. So if I want to change anything, I'll want to do that to the Photoshop document. But with the layers flattened, it's going to help me crop it a little easier. So I'm going to go ahead and get the crop tool. I'm going to put it in at a let's say a 5:7 ratio. You can always type in your own numbers or just completely clear the numbers and it won't have a ratio to it. But I want it pretty even, so I'm going to do 5:7. And 5:7 is vertical. We can see how that looks. I actually kind of like the vertical. Maybe inch it in a little from that. And it's more of an up-close portrait. And I click the little check box. That's looking pretty good. If your photo is already really close up, you don't necessarily need to crop it. Mine was just really zoomed out. I could have also cropped it horizontally or different ratios, but that's totally up to you for your photo. And then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to save this as another JPEG so that I have the uncropped one. I'm going to say just cropped or just crop on there so I know that that's the cropped one. I'm going to click save, OK, and now I have my edited photo here to turn in. So if I go back and look at Finder, I have my originals up here, I have the uncropped JPEG, my Photoshop document where it's uncropped, and then I have a cropped version. So now I can turn that in. So that is the strips project. You can do it horizontally, vertically, it's totally up to you how you do the strips. And it's just going to depend on how zoomed in your photo is and the size of your photo, how large those strips are going to be.